Good day to you and welcome. As David Allen said, your mind is for having ideas, not holding them. I work with micro businesses and it is to you that I'm speaking because when you are your business, you're the marketing department, the finance department and the sales department, and you've got a lot of information and deadlines to manage. If your mind isn't holding all of your great ideas, your plans and all of the other information that makes your business run, then who or what is? In a larger organisation, each department will use specialist software to track deadlines and manage information, and your business is no different. At the very least, you need 3 systems. One to keep track of your leads, another to keep track of live projects, client work, and one to manage your finances. If you are lucky enough to be an accountant, then you have the upper hand because accountancy processes are pretty much documented and you can run this logic across all of your other business processes. If, like me, you're not an accountant, then documenting your business processes is the first step so that you can stop holding information in your mind. There are 2 problems associated with using your mind to hold all of your ideas. The first problem is that your brain rarely reminds you of important things at the time when you need to be reminded. Usually you're deep in thought, focusing on a pitch or even presenting to a new client, and wham! Your mind decides that now is the time you need to remember to buy toilet roll. Important? Yes, but not at that moment in time, because you can't do anything about it. And now your brain has to try and remember to remind you again. The second problem is that when you store everything in your head, it makes you indispensable. And the problem with being indispensable is that the job can't be done without you. Now this is perfectly fine if you don't have any plans to grow your business and you know that you always want to be doing all of the work yourself because, hey, you are the business. It works for many people, and while it worked for me for quite some time, it wasn't until I listened to employed friends telling me about their 2-week holidays and how they didn't get in touch with work, they just were on holiday and it sounded heavenly. And because I craved what they had, I was determined to find a way to achieve it. When I'm in this type of situation, I think the objectivity of the if this then that formula makes finding the solution much more natural. So let's start with the problem. The problem is, I am indispensable to my business. So if we work this through using if this then that, we should come up with a solution. So if I am indispensable, then only I can do the work. And if I am dispensable, then someone else can do the work. If only I know the processes, then no one else can do the work. However, if I write out the processes, then everything I know is documented. And if everything I know is documented, then someone else can follow the process. And if someone else can follow the process, then they can do the work. And if someone else can do the work, then I am dispensable. And if I am dispensable, then I can be away from the business. The solution? I need a user manual. And that's what I created. I worked out all the steps that make up the essential processes within my company, and I made them as simple as possible, or I automated them. For example, let's have a look at lead management. I documented the processes and I set up the software to mirror them, and I then created a variety of standardized email responses along with supporting documents. And so when a lead comes in, it's logged, and from there anyone can access my software and pick up the next task to take that lead through to a client. I've done the same with projects, and so when a project goes live, anyone can access my system, follow the steps, and use the supporting documents and take that project through to completion. Finally, I collated all of my business processes into one place and created a learning library. And I created my learning library in Asana. Within that learning library, it is stuffed full of how-to videos so that every aspect of my business has a corresponding video. So now when I'm asked, how do I do this? I point them to the learning library where they will find a video. These 3 systems mean I am dispensable. And because I'm dispensable, I can spend my time as I please. And you can too. How? Let's start with what you know. You know everything in your business. And so every time you do something, you write it down, you record a video, or document the process in a way that will work for you and which is easy for others to access. Here you can see my learning library, and I've set it up as a list. And that's simply because I prefer that view. If you're not a fan of lists, then you can set it up as a Kanban style board. Content-wise, they are identical. They're just different layouts. And so I'm going to go back to the list because that's what makes me more comfortable. So as I say, you can see that I've documented many elements of my business and I've created short videos to accompany each process. So when someone clicks on creating a quote, there's a little movie of how to create a quote. I still have many videos to record, but I think this gives you the flavour. You don't have to create a video, you can add text instead. So if I click creating a purchase order, you'll see that here are the steps to create a purchase order, and at the end of those it gives you the guidelines for creating a task in the Asana project so that once the purchase order is sent, it's logged within the project. If you prefer, you can create a process document in Google Docs. And you can use outline view to jump between the different segments. When I'm mapping processes for clients, I usually start with a document like this, and then I record the videos and set up the learning library. Whichever method you opt for, once you have the processes documented, anyone can follow the steps, and this makes for swift and easy onboarding of staff or freelancers, and it makes delegating a breeze. Now, once someone is signed up as a client with me, they need to be onboarded. For me, they move from HubSpot to Asana. Technically, they could stay in HubSpot, but I prefer Asana, and so I've got a client onboarding board. In this instance, I've used a board because, like manufacturing, there is a specific process to follow. The new client enters the process on the left and moves along until they end up in the final column, which tells me that they've been onboarded. In column 1, I've created a template card. And so when a new client enters the process here, the template card is copied and a due date is added to the first task. And once that due date is added, Frank gets an alert that he needs to be doing something. Within this card, you can see that all of the tasks are dependent upon the previous task being completed. And once a task is completed, Asana will notify the assignee of the next task. And so the client moves through the process and bounces around the various people in the organisation until the card ends up in the final column. If I want to see the status of this board, then I can run a report, and this shows me all of the incomplete tasks. So if something has stood still for a while, I can open the card, mention the current task holder, and ask them if they've got a problem. Now, although I use software to manage my business, spreadsheets and a diary will work just as well to get you started. As long as the information is out of your head and deposited in a central repository, you are well on your way to making yourself indispensable. If you're still unsure how to get started, then download the 6 essential tips that will make it easier for you to create your business user manual. Creating a process document or a user manual doesn't just make for easy delegation and swift and easy onboarding of staff and freelancers. It also gives you an excellent understanding of what you need your software to do. And so when you're conducting your software research, you will have a shopping list of requirements. And just remember what David Allen said, your mind is for having ideas, not holding them. When you document your processes and you have systems to support them, your mind is free to think about interesting and exciting things. Your mind can wander freely because no more will your brain interrupt your creative thoughts to remind you of something you need to do.